Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Menage a Troi, which is episode 24 of season 3 of Star Trek The Next Generation. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Next Generation, one episode at a time. In this video, I will cover the third season episode of Menage a Troi. So Menage a Troi is the episode where they're visiting Beta Z for a conference, and Deanna is being pressured by her mother to get a husband, and she particularly tries to play matchmaker with her and Riker, who seem to not need much of the help as they start kissing while they're on the planet. However, before things can go any further, they're abducted, all three of them that is, are abducted by a Ferengi who lusts after Luoxana and wants to use her telepathic abilities for his advantage in order to gain profit. So she tries to manipulate him and his because he's so lustful for her, and to helping them escape. However, his assistant, Dr. Ferrick, sees through her deception and then tries to torture her to rip her telepathic abilities from her. However, Riker manages to escape, and but then they are again caught. However, they strike a deal where Luoxana will stay with the Ferengi willingly if they let Deanna and Riker go. So they do return them to the Enterprise, but however, when Counselor Troi tells Picard that she didn't stay there willingly, they then put on a charade where Picard pretends to be an ex-lover who is madly in love with her, and then scares the Ferengi into sending Luoxana back. And then once it's done, Luoxana still acts like they're lovers, which makes Picard very uncomfortable. And then, Wesley was supposed to leave to the academy, but he was the only one who could figure out how to find Riker and Troi, and so he stayed on the ship. So Picard makes him a full ensign. Anyway, so I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm sending the emergency message. I'm doing the tune of that music that they had at the start of the episode. Well, it's good enough for Wesley and Riker. They figured it out. Riker sent it, but Wesley figured it out. Anyway, that was a stupid signal. Anyway, really, I always thought that it would be like a simple SOS or something like that. Anyway, the title, I want to talk about the title first, because some people said the title is a little risque. And let me be honest, I first saw this episode when I was 12 years old. I did not know what the title was referencing. In fact, I would later learn, I think 2 years later, when I was 14 years old, if I remember correctly. And when I first learned what it was referencing was from Seinfeld. And I saw the episode of Seinfeld where Seinfeld was, I don't know, it was some sort of thing where he was dating this girl, but she had a roommate that was very annoying, and she wanted the roommate to go away. And so he had his plot was to offer them to be in a threesome. Oh no, the thing is, he had a crush on his girlfriend's roommate. That's what it was, and he wanted to swap out his current girlfriend for the roommate, but he wouldn't know how to do that without alienating both of them. So his plan was to recommend ask for a threesome between the three of them, and that would alienate his current girlfriend and then make the roommate more interested in it. This is Seinfeld. That was his plan. Anyway, but how Seinfeld propositioned both of them was saying, I believe it's pronounced Menage a Trois. And when he said that, I was like, hey, that's what this episode's referencing. I was 13 years old. Don't blame me. And to be fair, I haven't heard it referred to as a menage a trois that often since then. In fact, I think Seinfeld is still the only reference where most people just say threesome. Anyway, yeah. So that's the term I heard most of all. But anyway, but yeah, with Seinfeld, it ended up backfiring him because they both actually agreed to the threesome. He's like, I can't be an orgy man, which is, I think, a bit ridiculous. But anyway, so that's how. So a lot of people think that the title's a bit too much referring to a threesome. But and how is it a threesome? Is it a threesome because the Ferengi captured 3 of them? I suppose, but the Ferengi doesn't want the 3 of them to have sex. He just wants to have sex with Luoxana. I don't know. It was a lazy pun, and I guess to try to stick Troi into the title, kind of like they do with the lazy puns with Q. Like, what does Q who mean? What does Deja Q mean? Like, they just want to stick people's names in the title, and it doesn't really make any sense. Anyway... So I'm going to be honest again. I'm going to start my reviews, although this is in the beginning of my review. I already started it, but still, I'm going to start my reviews by being honest. And I'm going to spoil my ranking of all the episodes of Season 3 here. This is decidedly my least favorite episode of Season 3. Now, whether or not I give this episode a negative rating, because I have classically said that I haven't given any negative ratings to any episode of Season 3, but that was previous, and I said at the start, if there's an episode where I feel like it deserves a negative rating, I'm going to give it one, even though it will change the official concept that I no longer, gave no negative ratings to an episode of Season 3. But you'll have to wait till the end of the video, ooh, cliffhanger, to find out what my final determination is on that regard. But I will say, regardless of whether or not I give it a 5 or a 6, this is easily my least, well, not easily, but it is singly, definitely, clearly my least favorite episode of the season. And again, if an episode that actually is not that bad is my least favorite episode of the season, tells you how much I love Season 3 and why it is my favorite season of the entire Star Trek franchise. If this is the worst you got, and it's kind of just mediocre, then that's a good fucking season. Like, even next season we'll get into Season 4, which is, some people, like the writers, have said was better than Season 3, and I've heard other critics say it was better than Season 3. I have some very clear negative episodes. Like, the one off the top of my head is clearly a 1, and it's, in fact, was my top 5 worst episodes of the entire show. I don't know if it's still my top 5. It might be top 10 now, but it's definitely top something worse. And that's in Season 4. And there's other negative rating episodes I can think of off the top of my head. So, yeah. And same with, like, Season 5, 6, and 7. There's definitely ones in those episodes, too. And those seasons as well. So, yeah, Season 3 is clearly my favorite. But anyway, getting back to this episode in particular, it's a silly Luoxana Troi episode, but here's the thing. I was thinking about Manhunt, the Season 2 Luoxana Troi episode, which, I railed against. That is in my top 5 worst episodes of TNG. How incredibly better this episode is compared to that. I mean, that kind of elevates the episode for me just there. Just seeing how, like, that what they did with the Luoxana in Season 2, to me, showed that they didn't know what to do with that character, because they were just repeating all the same jokes from Haven, from her Season 1. Like, all the jokes were just lesser rehashes of jokes that they already did in Haven. And in this episode, they don't even come close. I suppose they come, like, a tad bit close, but they don't really come close to rehashing those jokes used. So that right there is, like, a massive improvement. that shows that they know how to use Luoxana Troi again without just rehashing everything that they already did. So that right there is a huge positive. But so the Ferengi, this is continuing the season 3 tradition of making the Ferengi a comedic villain, which there's a comedic element to this episode. And they're fine in that regard. I don't think this is the worst use of the Ferengi, but it's not particularly great either. It's fine, which is honestly what I think of in a lot of this episode. It's like, yeah, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. It's fine. It kind of describes my whole feeling of the episode. But I will say that, and, I talked about this a billion times. I'm sick of talking about it, and if you're watching my channel a lot, you're probably sick of hearing me say it. But I gotta mention it for those who maybe haven't seen my channel before. I watched season 4 several times before I watched the other season. I saw seasons 1 and 2 before I saw. So season 3 was the last season that I saw. So many of the episodes were they were referenced to or heard about them, but I didn't actually see them. So they were kind of intriguing mysteries to me. And I remember hearing about an episode where the Ferengi kidnapped Luoxana and Deanna Troi and Riker, and I remember being intrigued and thinking, oh wow, that sounds like a good episode. Don't ask me why I thought a Ferengi episode with Luoxana and Troi sounded like a good episode. I was 11 years old or 12 years old, so don't ask me why, but I did. And when I saw it, since I had been anticipating it so much, I had automatically convinced myself that it was awesome. So, now this wasn't one of my favorite episodes when I was a teenager. I talked about some other episodes, like Vengeance Factor, which was, and Future Imperfect. But this one was, it wasn't one of my favorites, but I liked it. I thought, oh, yeah, that was a pretty fun episode. But, of course, with the eyes of an adult and being very sort of analytical and analyzing episodes, as I always try to do, I did find that was not that good of an episode because while they use Luoxana better than Mantrap, or not Mantrap, that's the original series episode, Manhunt, sorry. While they use Luoxana better than Manhunt, that's a very low bar. That is an extremely low bar to clear. So hooray for them for clearing the lowest of low bars. But and the Ferengi, I think I liked them better when I was 12 years old. Not that big of, especially how they overdid them in Deep Space Nine, which I'll get to when I get to Deep Space Nine about the Ferengi episode. Every Ferengi episode of Deep Space Nine is clearly the bottom of the whole show. So yeah, not a huge fan of the Ferengi, but again, in the big scheme of things, like the Ferengi weren't that entirely misused. In this episode, the thing with, I think, I will say Ethan Phillips, who plays Neelix on Voyager. Before that, obviously, he played the Ferengi on this episode. The Dr. Ferric, the sidekick or whatever, the evil Ferengi. He did a pretty good job. I think he did a decent job. He was like, to keep your daughter alive and well, for one. Like, the way he says that, I mean, I know the Ferengi are goofy, and they're kind of meant to be in this comedic episode, but that was kind of menacing. I think he did a good job of playing a menacing Ferengi, and I like the dude who played Tog as well. I thought, Tog was a pretty convincing Ferengi. It was kind of comedic. I will say, the scene at the start of the episode where he propositions Luoxana in 10-4, and she yells at him and calls him a troll. And it was kind of funny. And he was just she walks out, and he's kind of just very well, as you wish. After she just berated him, and then Ethan Phillips or whatever comes up to him and is like, and now that you've embarrassed us, can we go? And he's like, Luxana Troi, you will be mine. You know what that makes me think of? That makes me think of Wayne's World. The Wayne's World with the kind of half-ass, like jokingly. Where he went when he saw that woman, the love interest of the film. He's like, "You will be mine." Oh yes, you will be mine. That's because he does that kind of making fun of films that do that, and here they did it kind of seriously. Well, not really seriously, but kind of seriously. But yeah, so I always think of Wayne's World when I see that scene. But backtracking a bit, the clever thing I like about this opening scene is. And again, it's clever in a kind of silly way, but how the Loxana, like the Ferengi goes up to a Loxana and she clearly doesn't want to talk to him, and so she brushes him off to say, oh, I'm doing something with Captain Picard. So she goes over to Captain and tries to strike up a conversation with him, but he clearly doesn't want to talk to her, so he makes up a bullshit excuse. Oh, I was going to show the ambassador the new door mechanism. Which is such a lame excuse, the new door mechanism. And I think it's supposed to be silly on purpose. And so it creates this sort of interesting, cascade where she tries to brush off the Ferengi by trying to go to Picard, but Picard brushes her off because he doesn't want to talk to her. So I think that was a little bit clever. Okay, so then there's Riker and Troi going to the planet. Now so we get the scene where the Loxana is arguing with Deanna because she's trying to get her to marry someone, which seems in her character, and Deanna gets a little pissed off with her. I thought that was a decent scene. I always remember that scene. I couldn't remember what episode it was from, but now, I see it. I was like, yeah, no, that's actually, because Deanna did argue a bit with her mother in the two previous occurrences, but she never really outright confronted her like the way she did now in the full-on argument. And so that was interesting seeing it here, and how, when she always calls her little one, and she got really pissed off about that and said, little one, I'm not 5 anymore, or whatever she says and yells, and how Loxana really does, it shows that she really does care about, because when she said little one, she stopped herself, she's like, I mean Deanna, and it shows that she really does care about Deanna and her happiness. She's just going about it, the wrong way, and of course being annoying and interfering. But, okay, so I'm sorry, I have to address Picard going to Riker and saying, oh, Counselor Troi had the good sense to request shore leave, but I see I'm going to have to insist with you. I'm sorry, Jean-Luc. Could you be any more of a hypocrite if you tried? I think the answer is no. I think you could not be any more of a hypocrite even if you tried. Do we not recall just a few episodes ago in Captain's Holiday where they had to practically shove you out of the ship to get you on the shore leave? They had to harass and annoy you for like a week straight before you finally agreed to go on the shore leave, and you have the nerve to complain that Riker doesn't have the good sense to request shore leave. Which, by the way, Riker seems like the character who would be more than happy to go on shore leave, as he made clear in that same episode. So, that's kind of out of character for him not to ask, but it's still completely... The hypocrisy was just too much for me to handle, Picard saying that. Anyway, so I just had to bring that up. So they go down to the planet, and Riker and Troi are kind of hooking up, and they actually I think they actually kiss, which is, I think they do kiss. It's not that they God, I should have rewatched the scene because I thought maybe Loxana, they were about to kiss, but Loxana interrupts them. But I think they do kiss. But the Wikipedia said that the Memory Alpha said that this contradicts Star Trek Insurrections, where Riker kisses Troi and she says, "Yuck! I've never kissed you with the beard before." Which, if they did kiss in this episode, would contradict that. But maybe their lips didn't actually touch. Maybe Loxana. I don't know, because I don't trust Memory Alpha now because they were wrong. I was wondering if I should contribute or point out the fact that one of the things they said were wrong about this episode, because they said that in this episode they make it clear that Betazoids can't sense Ferengi, and they said that's contradicted in the 3 previous episodes: The Last Outpost, The Battle, and The Price, which is absolutely not true. That is incorrect. It's false information. The Last Outpost made it extremely clear that Betazoids cannot sense Ferengi. In fact, that's where it came from. It didn't come from this episode. It came from The Last Outpost. Now, The Battle, I don't remember. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. The Price, I know for a fact they did imply that she could read the Ferengi, but that was the episode that was out of place, not this one. The Price was out of place for suggesting that she could read the Ferengi when it had been clearly established, as I said, in The Last fucking Outpost, clearly established that Betazoids could not read Ferengi. So the Memory Alpha is wrong. It was talking like this episode changed it, but no, it was the Price that changed it, and this episode reverted back to what they originally established in The Last Outpost. Now, maybe The Battle showed her reading, said that she could read the Ferengi. I don't remember. But I know for a fact that The Last Outpost said that Betazoids could not read Ferengi. That's where it first came from. Anyway, and so for that reason, maybe Memory Alpha's wrong about them kissing. Alright, hold on. I'm going to have to pause this, go watch this scene, because I don't want everyone in the comment section to be correcting me. So I'm going to find out definitively if they kissed or not. Okay, final verdict. Memory Alpha is actually right about this one. They did technically kiss, although it was extremely brief. It was like half a second before they were interrupted by Loxana and Troi's, but their lips did technically touch. Although I would argue they did not touch long enough for Deanna to feel his beard, but that is neither here nor there. Anyway, my main objection to this scene is that Loxana and Troi's goal is to get Deanna a husband, and it seems like she's pushing her to Riker, which in the next scene implies where she's like really nudging her about them two getting together. And so why the fuck did she interrupt them when they were kissing? It seems like they were doing just fine without her, and her showing up actually made, actually kind of cock-blocked Riker. And that they would have gotten along fine, and that she was kind of messing things up with her whole goal. Now, granted, maybe she is just too stupid to see that, or to know that, but question, isn't Loxana telepath? I thought that's what this whole episode's about. Wouldn't she be able to sense that the two of them were feeling kind of erotic towards each other at the time? So why would she interrupt? That makes no sense. Answer the plot of the episode, so the episode could happen. Anyway, but why? Here's the question though. Why was Riker and Troi, why were they making out why were they because they've never done that in the whole 3 years of TNG, and they won't again, not until Insurrection, which I just talked about, which takes place many years after this. So, and it seems kind of out of place. Why were they? I don't know. But to be honest, that is part of what I like about this episode. But I wish that it would have made more sense why they were getting together, and I wish they would have explored this more. Like, are they just friends with benefits? I've heard some other reviewers joking about that they're friends with benefits. Maybe, I don't know. We kind of have to assume that. But, yeah, I wish they would have explained that a bit more. But anyway. Yeah, so then the Ferengi come and abduct them, and we get this stupid scene with Riker, playing on the idiocy of the goon in order to get out of jail, with tricking him with playing chess. Which, by the way, at the start of this episode, when Riker beat the Ferengi at chess, and Wesley was like, "Oh, the Queen's Gambit," and I said, "Ah." So he saw that Netflix show too. I know that the Queen's Gambit is a thing way before the Netflix show, and that's what the Netflix show was named after, and this came out way before the Netflix show, but I still like making that joke. Deal with it. Anyway, so he uses this stupid chess trick to fool the Ferengi and escape from the jail. And I hate that trope. I've talked about this many times before. I hate the trope of the idiot henchman, that when the main heroes get captured, they just have to manipulate the idiot henchman in order to escape. Now, this one was not as bad as some other offenders. I'm thinking the worst offender by far is Renaissance Man and Voyager, which I already covered. And then there's also Acquisition and Enterprise, which involves the Ferengi again. And then also the Strange New World Season 1 episode with the pirates. That's when I brought it up again. I just hate that fucking trope of idiot henchmen, and all they got to do is manipulate them and in order to get out. Now, this one, as I said, this one wasn't the worst, because the other ones, they literally had to promise them, "Oh, we're going to give you great stuff, and I appreciate you more." Where here, Riker just tricks him to letting him out of cell by playing off the fact that he desperately wanted to play chess, which is still bad. I still think it's stupid, but it's nowhere near as bad as the other three examples I gave. Anyway, so Loxana actually has sex with Tog. I don't know. To me, this is supposed to be a lighthearted comedy episode, and that was fucking creepy, especially seeing Counselor Troi's reaction, because she could sense that she has a strong telepathic connection with her mother, and so she could sense that exactly what she was going through, and by feeling her reaction of having to have sex with Tog was very creepy. Very creepy that it was, Anyway, I'm not going to get into that more, just that I didn't really like that scene, even though it kind of makes sense that that's what Tog would expect. But it seems, I don't know, it seems contrary to the lightheartedness, the comedy, lighthearted, fluffy episode. But yeah, I already railed on Riker using the that was pretty stupid. But then, they make a deal for Riker and Troi to go back, and Picard has to make his little beautiful love speech. Now, I have to be honest here. Gotta be honest. I thought this scene was hilarious. I have a memory of watching this with my ex-wife, and I remember her laughing hysterically at this. And just having memories of watching it with someone, no matter who it is, and they're laughing hysterically, makes me also want to laugh hysterically. Unless I think it's dumb and what the hell are you laughing at? But that's not the case. In this case, I get it. I always thought this scene was funny, but now I think it's hilarious. So when I watch this, I think it's a really funny scene. Also, must mention, I've been pointing out a couple of popular memes have been going around. This is one of the most popular memes of Picard with his arm outstretched, and the meme says, "Why the fuck?" and then they insert whatever the meme is, going to say. But that thing with his hand outstretched is from this episode when he's reciting the poetry. I'm sorry. I think that Patrick Stewart's granted in the first part of the scene where he's reciting the poetry to Loxana and Tog, that this was obviously filmed separately. That Patrick Stewart is reacting to, an AD sitting there reading the script in a monotone voice. But I still think that the comedic timing in the scene was perfect. Maybe you can chalk that up to the editors, but still, the comic timing between them, where he's saying, "Shall I compare thee?" and saying all this Shakespeare stuff, and it's so hilarious that that as soon as Deanna was like, "Oh, you have to fight to get her back," and so his first instinct was just to stand up and recite Shakespeare love poetry. It was so hilarious. And then Loxana interrupts him and was like, "Now, Jean-Luc, you can't keep killing all my ex-lovers." And so Picard, again, this is what I'm talking about with the great comedic timing, that he immediately, instantly changed, "Listen, dog," and threatens to blow up the ship. "Throw everything you got at them." Now, here's the thing: he told Mr. Worf to throw everything they had at him at the Ferengi vessel at the count of 5. Would Worf have done that? Because does Worf know that it's not an actual order? Or wasn't an actual order? But I think that he was betting on that Tog would beam her back first, which he did. So it never came up. But that still always enters my mind: is what if Worf did throw everything they had at them, and there Jean-Luc was like, "Mr. Worf, I was just putting on an act," and he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You told me to fire everything we had." Anyway, that would have been a funny thing. Anyway, maybe Riker sent Worf a secret message in this console being like, don't, this is not serious, don't do it. But anyway, I thought that was hilarious. I really, really did. And especially when Loxana beams over and sits in his lap, and after the Ferengi leaves, she's like, "Oh, Jean-Luc, why don't we stay?" Oh, also, another thing I gotta mention about this scene is when Picard's reciting the love poetry, they have a shot of Worf who rolls his eyes. He's like, "Oh God, what the fuck is he doing?" I love that. Oh, that's so great. That really, really adds to the humor of the scene. So then there's the Wesley subplot, which I didn't really care about, to be honest. It was just, I don't know, I feel like it was just contrived so they could put him in a red uniform so he didn't have to wear that ugly looking gray spacesuit, which I haven't read the Patreon comments yet, but if I had to guess, I would say Brandon's going to mention something about that ugly gray spacesuit. Maybe not, I don't know. But Brandon's always really good at pointing out the bad costuming. Anyway, so yeah, it was that whole subplot was just a contrivance to get him out, saying, "Oh, he's supposed to go," and also explain why he isn't in Starfleet fucking Academy yet. Because come on, he's been an acting ensign on the Galaxy class flagship. That's why does someone who hasn't even been to the Academy get to do that? That seems like a very, there's ensigns that, who work, 4 years or work really hard and do all this work to get on the Enterprise, yet some 17-year-old who hasn't even been to the Academy gets to be a bridge officer. Well, this is why I objected to Wesley in the first place, though. Has to do with why I didn't really like Wesley being on the bridge, and why when the Gatherer came on board in Vengeance Factory and says, "A child?" I think the Gatherer was 100% correct. What is a child doing on the bridge? Anyway, so this has come just a bullshit thing to make an excuse for that, why they're going to keep Wesley on the show. And thankfully Will Wheaton decided to leave in season 4, because then that explained why it wasn't too long after that he actually got to go through the Academy, because if they tried to stretch that out over 7 seasons, it would really be stupid. It would really stretch everything thin. So, I mean, honestly, at that point, you probably need to, do a 4-year time jump in between seasons and have Wesley come back to the Enterprise. I mean, I don't know if the show would have done that, but that would have been the only logical way to get out of that if Will Wheaton hadn't have left the show. Anyway, so, I mean, it could. Anyway, So the Wesley side plot, like, it was kind of dumb how they kept bugging him to leave, and he was like, no, I got to figure out this thing with the noise again, getting to that stupid popping sound noise, and he's the only one that can figure it out. It's always Wesley, always fucking has to be Wesley. He's the only one who can figure this shit out. Now, granted, this isn't one of the worst examples of that, of him saving the fucking ship, because only a 17-year-old can figure out what trained, like, lieutenant commanders who have spent 20 plus years training and practice acting in the Starfleet can't figure out, but some 17-year-old fucking boy can. But so it's not one of the worst examples of it, but it's still Wesley saves the day cliche, which I fucking hate. So, but anyway, it's fine, whatever. He figures it out, and the whole thing, it was goofy, where it's like, oh, the ship's going to have to leave without you, whatever, blah, 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 and now we're going to make you a full ensign, blah, 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 or field commission, I think Picard said, but whatever. That's all. That storyline was very whatever. It's not terrible, but I don't really care about it. I could have done without it. Anyway, now I would like to thank my Patreon supporters for supporting me on Patreon. It's very much appreciated. It does help me continue with this channel. I am very thankful, very humbled by everyone's support. So I'll just give a quick shout out to Antarius, Tatson, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky Manigester, Joel Lavals, Alessandro Miguelistillo, Norman Buckwald, Stephen Kennedy, Brenton Berg, Allison Fordyce, and Brandon Neal House. Thank you all so very much for your support. So, a few Patreon comments on this episode. First comment is from Kyrie091, who says, Menage a Troi, more like... I'm actually good friends with Susan Sakic in real life, who wrote this episode, and was Gene Roddenberry's personal assistant for 17 years until his death in 1991. Which I remember Kyrie091 telling me about that before, and that's very interesting. But yeah, there we go. No funny pun this time, just some interesting information. Anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, what a boring episode. The only thing that is good is the Wesley storyline. I would like you to talk about how this is how I got into Star Trek. I was actually a fan of the original series as it was on TV before the show. I was waiting for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh, so the original series came on before Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Gotcha. I was waiting for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. One night over at a friend's house, he persuaded me to watch 2 episodes of TNG, which were Sins of the Father and The Offspring. And in that order for some reason. It was the end of August of 1992 when I got into Star Trek. I did see a few more episodes before Season 6 started. I can't remember which ones I saw, but I know The Inner Light was one of them, so I missed the first 5 seasons of TNG, but I was around for the beginning of DS9. So my rating is 3 Demon Togs out of 10. The only funny part in this whole episode. Oh, come on. Picard doing the poetry wasn't funny? I thought that was hilarious. I don't know. That's just me. But anyway, so you got into Star Trek a year after I did, because I got in 91. Although it was slightly more than a year, because it seems like you got in the Star Trek in between or at the tail end of season 5, if you saw The Inner Light, where I got into, well, no, it would have been less than a year, because I got into Star Trek in the middle of season 5, towards the beginning, like when Unification aired around that time. So it was 91 though. It would have been the end of 91. So yeah, less than a year. So around the same time. Anyway, next comment is from Norman Buckwald, who says, one of the more overrated episodes of Trek with a typical Berman-inspired title and a Ferengi that shows he is absolutely stupid, thinking he can get away with this kidnapping, especially also including 2 senior officers of the flagship of Starfleet. It's only at best very lightly amusing to have Picard cite mostly Shakespeare to Loxana to scare the Ferengi, and to see a predictable Loxana to be so taken by the act as if real. While obviously not as bad as Manhunt, I also have trouble giving this episode anything close to praise. 3 annoying melody riffs Wesley sends to Riker and Troi out of 10. Also, even in 1990, there's such a thing as teleconferencing. The plot explanation as to why Wesley isn't going again to Starfleet Academy is lame at best. Now, I will totally agree with that last part. That is a lame excuse to keep Wesley on board the Enterprise. However, yeah, kind of actually... Here's the thing. Your statement that it's one of the most overrated episodes of Star Trek, I really don't get that, because I don't think this episode's rated very highly, at least not from what I've seen. All the reviews I watched for it were like extremely negative to it. In fact, it has a 6.5 on IMDb, which is the second lowest, tied for the second lowest rated episode of season 3. So I would disagree that this episode is overrated, simply because I don't think it's rated that highly. But yeah, that's just my thinking on it. So next comment is from Brandon Neal Howells, who says, since the title of this episode is a very bad pun on the phrase Menage a Trois, which is French for house of 3 or threesome, please accept my not very good rewrite. The 3 most irritating characters in Star Trek franchise: the telepath who never shuts up, the infernally cheerful Talaxian who even Tuvok fantasizes about strangling, the singing hologram who should never be named. They get together in the Espelon quadrant and fuck each of the other senseless before boring each other to death and or killing each other. Yeah, okay, I invented the Espelon quadrant because the other quadrants aren't far enough away. That is really funny. Although I don't hate Neelix as much as I hate the annoying singing hologram, or Loxana for that matter, but I'm a bit nicer to Neelix. Who would be the third character I would send to fuck each other senseless and then kill each other? I guess they would play a game of Fuck, Marry, Kill. Alright, let's play a game of Fuck, Marry, Kill with the 3 you mentioned. Neelix, Vic Fontaine, and Loxana. So, God, that's a tough one. Oh my God, that's hard. So Kill is easy. That's Vic Fontaine, obviously. I know he's a hologram, but still, that's easily my pick for Kill. Now, fuck, I think I'm gonna have to go with Neelix. Oh, no. I just realized how horrible it would be to be married to Loxana Troi. Okay, so I'm going to go with fuck for Loxana and marry Neelix. Yeah, Neelix would be horrible to be married to, but not as bad. Loxana would make me want to kill myself. So that I know you didn't ask for this, but I just thought that would be interesting. But anyway, yeah, so if I were going to send, getting back to your original premise, if I was going to send 3 people off to the Espelon quadrant to fuck each other senseless and then kill each other, yeah, it would be Vic Fontaine, Loxana, and probably Trip, Charles Tucker III. Sorry, I don't like him. He's too much like George W. Bush. So happy that character actually did die. Anyway, that's why the finale of Enterprise isn't as bad as everyone says. Anyway, sorry. Oh, God. Anyway, actually, no, not Trip. Instead of Trip, I want to say Admiral Janeway. That way that Endgame never happens. There we go. You know, Admiral Janeway from the future. Not the Admiral Janeway from Nemesis or freaking Prodigy. No, the one from Endgame. So the Endgame never happens. There, that's my real answer. Sorry. maybe her instead of Roxanne. Yeah, it would be her, Trip, and Vic Montaigne. There we go. Anyway, sorry. Okay, as to the actual episode, the Ferengi is correct. The noise is distracting and should not be played during a chess match. If the Betazoid women insist on naked wedding ceremonies, why are Luoxana and Deanna so indigent when their clothes is transported away by Damon Togg? This episode is noteworthy for the introduction of Umox, 2 Rikers, and the puffy shirt from Seinfeld. Out of 10. All right, so you didn't mention Wesley's ugly, boring gray suit. Maybe not in this episode. You might have mentioned it before. But you did mention Riker having a puffy shirt from Seinfeld. I haven't noticed that, but that is so funny. Anyway, I think it's a different thing. When the Walks, sure they get a weddings naked, but they've been abducted by Ferengi, and then they forcibly had their clothes removed and so they can leer at them. Kind of a different thing. I think it's a different situation. For me, that makes total sense. But Umox, I forgot to talk about Umox. Yes, this is the introduction of Umox, and yeah. I think, and I'll talk about this when I get to Deep Space Nine, which is mainly when they reference it again, because they seem to imply in a lot of episodes that giving a Ferengi Umox is kind of like holding hands or maybe rubbing their shoulder or something, but that's not what this episode implies. This episode very clearly implies that it's giving a freaking hand job, and sometimes Deep Space Nine doesn't seem to treat that seriously. Like, for example, Jadzia wants Quark to do something, so she goes up to him, grabs his ears, and starts massaging. That's like if she went up to him and started giving him a hand job in the middle of the fucking, public in front of everybody. But anyway, so I don't think Deep Space Nine treats it like it should be treated, at least not how this episode introduces it. Anyway, God, this review's getting quite crude. I just realized that. It's all your fault, Brendan. No, I'm just kidding. It's my fault. Anyway, next comment is from Greg Marley, who says, I, for one, consider this a very interesting and fun episode and is about as dirty as TNG ever got, other than the naked now. It develops the Ferengi far more than before, just for one thing, and maybe I just never disliked Luoxana as much as most people did. I think she's the kind of person that's tough to take, but you can learn something from. Well, I kind of disagree with that. The tough to take part I agree with, but learn something from? I don't know. I just think there's some episodes she's used better than others, and this is not the best, but definitely not the worst. But anyway, is this the most dirty episode that the TNG has had? What about Sub Rosa when Dr. Crusher's getting on with the little space ghost? I think, and they actually show her having an orgasm. I think that one. And then she gets turned on by reading her grandmother's journals. Yeah, but anyway, maybe that's more disgusting than dirty. I don't know. But anyway, thank you comments for your patron. No, thank you Patreon supporters for your comments. It's very much appreciated. So, the moment of truth, my rating for Menage a Troi, I believe it's pronounced Menage a Troi, out of 10 is going to be a 6. Good. So there we go. Positive ratings. I can spoil that there's only 2 more episodes of season 3, and I'll spoil they're definitely both getting positive ratings. Sorry, Transfiguration haters, but we'll get to that episode next. So this is my least favorite of season 3, and it gets a positive rating. So there you go. Positive ratings all around. Now again, if I think this deserved to get a 5, I would give it a 5, even if that means I would have to have 1 negative rating in season 3, so be it. But, and I thought about this a lot because it was on the edge of getting a 5. In fact, when I was first watching it, I was like, Yeah, I'm going to have to give this episode a 5. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to. But when we have the end when Picard does this, show I can, like, I'm sorry, that won me over. I don't care what anyone says. I think that's hilarious, particularly with Worf like rolling his eyes. That was, and there are other funny moments in this episode too, as I pointed out, like at the start of the episode. So yeah, I will give it. It just barely makes it to a 6. So there we go, a 6. Good. So that is it for my review of Menage a Troi. I shall be back to continue covering TNG. So coming up next on my channel this Monday, as I said, I will be covering Transfigurations. And then on Wednesday, I'll be back over on Patreon for a revisiting my review for The Best of Both Worlds, which I have, yes, already done a review for, so you can. It's already on my channel. But I will be updating that review for my Patreon supporters, revising my thoughts on the episode or adding some things that I didn't add in the original review. And then on Thursday, I'll be back on my main channel here for ranking all the episodes of Season 3 of The Next Generation, where I take all the episodes of Season 3 and rank them in order. I already gave away the one at the my least favorite episode, because it's this one. I already gave that away, but the rest of them, you can find out when I do that. And then on Saturday, as per my polls, as determined by the polls that I put up on my channel a couple weeks ago, I will be releasing my revisited for the original series poll winner, which was the Cobra Knight maneuver, which I will be releasing that publicly on my YouTube channel for everybody to see. I already made it, and it's on my Patreon, which my Patreon supporters already saw, but on this following Saturday, I will release it publicly on my YouTube channel so everyone else can see it, my revisited for the Cobra Knight maneuver. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek, The Next Generation, and many more Star Trek videos and many other videos and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.